Hello and welcome to this video. Here we will be examining the negative externalities associated with the demerit good of gambling. Specifically, we will be looking at casino gambling in Las Vegas, Nevada, in the United States of America. To start off, we will define the key terms of this case study. A demerit good is a good that is socially undesirable and thus overproduced and overconsumed, such as gambling. These goods have negative externalities, which are market activities that negatively impact a third party. An example of a negative externality of gambling is debt that the gambler may incur on his family. Negative externalities are a form of market failure. Market failure occurs when the price mechanism fails to achieve an optimum allocation of resources. Examples of market failure in Las Vegas gambling are personal debt, therefore no money for the children, loved ones, therefore no money to pay for the education of the child, bankruptcy, therefore no funds to support the family, suicide, therefore no one to take care of the children and the wife or husband, loss of productivity on the job, therefore business performance goes down, sick days off for gambling, therefore business productivity also decreases, extended lunch hours, therefore employers are cheated off and business performance also goes down, leaving early to gamble, therefore loss of business performance, theft, therefore the victim is robbed so that the gambler has funds to gamble, illness, depression, chronic severe headaches set in, family issues and divorce because of less spending of time with the wife or husband, but a possible offsetting is to increase revenue from taxes.
However, gambling has also brought many positive externalities to Las Vegas. Positive externalities are market activities that positively affect third parties. One positive externality is the economic prosperity that casino industry in Las Vegas generated. This encouraged the development of other supplementary entertainment businesses such as numerous hotels, restaurants, and clubs. The Las Vegas skyline is a testament to this. This industry would provide a lot of jobs and thus boost employment. This boost in real income will in turn provide families with numerous other positive externalities, such as the ability to pay for their children's education and a better quality of life in general. Also, because demand for gambling is price inelastic due to its addictive nature, the economy may be relatively immune to national economic swings. However, despite all of these positive externalities, gambling still incurs numerous negative externalities that must be addressed. Thus, this video will focus on the aforementioned negative externalities of Las Vegas' casino industries and what measures can be taken to address them.
Originally, the Venetian Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas was operating at point PQ. The quantity bought and sold of gambling was Q, and the price of gambling was P. However, since gambling is a demerit good and has negative externalities, such as personal debt and addiction, the state government of Nevada decided to impose an income tax of 30% on gambling in Las Vegas. This income tax added to gambling incorporates the value of the negative externality, so that this tax money can be used to alleviate the effects of the negative externality, such as funding education and gambling rehabilitation programs. Therefore, the true cost of gambling in Las Vegas is at point PT, where the value of the negative externality is accounted for. When the tax is added in Las Vegas, the MSC curve is created, and this creates a new equilibrium at P1Q1. This new equilibrium is the socially efficient output as it accounts for the value of the negative externality as shown by the line space on the graph. The new equilibrium effectively reduces the quantity bought and sold and increases the price of gambling. There are, however, problems with imposing tax, such as deciding the value of the negative externality and imposing a tax that will be fair to large casinos and small casinos. It would not be fair for a large casino, such as the Venetian, to pay as much tax as a smaller casino, such as Slotsafon, as the Venetian has a much larger gambling floor and many more gamblers. Therefore, a tax may not be the best option for the state government. Furthermore, a tax is an example of market failure, so by imposing a tax, the government is using market failure to correct another form of market failure. Other methods of correcting this market failure, which are the negative externalities which arise from gambling, will be discussed later.
One way to maintain the potential external costs of gambling is to impose a general tax on the gambling industry. To examine the effects of tax on the gambling industry, the tax incidence must be taken into account. The gambling's demand curve is price inelastic due to the addictive nature of it. Thus, by imposing a tax, the incidence, or burden, will fall mostly on the consumers. Thus, consumer surplus will decrease as prices are higher. But since gambling is price inelastic, most consumers will continue to gamble. Producer surplus will also fall as quantity demanded will decrease. In Las Vegas, the Nevada Gaming Commission and Control Board taxes $250 for each slot machine if the casino has more than 15 machines. And it also imposes a 6.75% tax on gross gaming revenue per month. This is the lowest rate in America. The Commission does not solely focus its taxation on the industry, but also the gamblers themselves. If one is fortunate enough to win a game, the Internal Revenue Service, the IRS, requires that 25 to 30% of all winnings be withheld as income tax to the state. The high income tax does not act to deter people from gambling, since the gamblers will still profit if the earnings were higher than the losses. And it's only placed on earnings, but rather it taxes a few lucky people who win out of the thousands that come out with empty wallets. The Commission do not want to deter people from gambling, but profit from those who gamble. Gambling is a big business in Las Vegas. 43% of all tax revenue comes from gambling, and thus it is important for the gambling industry to be healthy and profitable to keep high tax revenue. A third of the tax revenue is pumped into public education. Taxation is subjective. One has to ask themselves whether the current tax promotes gambling addiction, since one has nothing to lose until one wins. Therefore, to deter people from gambling altogether, the Commission must impose a stronger tax, and hence hurt a strong part of the economy as its opportunity cost.
Prohibition is another method that can be used to combat the impacts of negative externalities of gambling in Las Vegas. Prohibition is basically when a government bans the production and consumption of a good or service. For example, in 2006, the U.S. government passed the Unlawful Internet Gambling Enforcement Act, which prohibited internet gambling and thus reduced its negative externalities, such as the potential for fraud over the internet, as well as increased risk of gambling addiction. However, because of the positive externalities of gambling, such as the fact that it has helped make Las Vegas the 7th most popular U.S. travel destination for overseas visitors, it is unlikely that Nevada's government will pursue prohibition. Prohibition will negatively affect both consumers and producers in the short run, because gamblers will not be able to gain the utility they did from gambling, and producers will have to shut down. This would then increase unemployment as workers lost their jobs, as well as perhaps negatively impact the tourism industry. Also, undying demand for gambling might lead to parallel markets, which would render the Prohibition Act inefficient in reducing negative externalities. Prohibition itself is a form of regulation. Regulation refers to government efforts to combat the negative externalities of a good or service through legislation or other regulatory acts. Nevada has some form of regulation currently. Citizens must be 21 to enter a casino, and children are not allowed to be near slot machines and gambling tables. However, these forms of regulation do quite little to reduce gambling addiction, a principal negative externality that is the cause of many other negative externalities such as debt and suicide. Nevada could also perhaps create a law where casinos must be sealed off in a hotel so that children and adults do not always have to pass by or see it. This could reduce the temptation of gambling and prevent children from being exposed to it. However, if the infrastructure of the hotel does not allow this, the investment necessary to make this change may not be worth it. The state could also limit the operation hours of casinos. For example, they could impose a law where casinos can only open after normal working hours, except during holidays. This would prevent addicts from taking time off work to gamble. In the short run, this may slightly reduce the amount of money earned from gambling by casinos. However, in the long run, this could reduce gambling addiction and thus numerous other negative externalities that stem from it, such as bankruptcy and theft.
In conclusion, although gambling has its positive externalities, its negative externalities outweigh them and need to be addressed. In this video, we have listed a few methods of how these negative externalities could be addressed. However, there is no one perfect method of correcting market failure. Therefore, the government must constantly strive to achieve the delicate balance of combating the impacts of the negative externalities while ensuring that the revenues of big casinos in Las Vegas are not significantly damaged.